There we go. We're live. It's December 2020, the end of 2020. I know people think that's going to change things. It's just a calendar that people made up. Nothing's going to change magically in January, but it is the end of the year. It's always a good time to sort of reflect and look back. Um, but one thing, when I think of December, I think of starting MacAdmin Monthly. I didn't think about that too much before that escaped my mouth just now. But yeah, Ed, when did we start this? Is this our 10th year doing it? It's close. Maybe it's our ninth.
I think this is the beginning of the 10th year, so it'll be 10 years next.
Yeah. Wow. We've been doing this a while, and it's a passion project. I love it, and I love it connects all of us, and it keeps me sort of in the loop. Um, but let's just jump in right into it. This month we have Matt X joining us, along with a big chorus of people here. But Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself for the people, for the uninitiated.
I was not prepared for this question.
Yeah.
I used to be a sysadmin in some art schools and film schools, and then moved into visual effects for a number of years, and then finally had a unceremonious exit from that and became an IT consultant. The last thing I ever wanted to do, be my own business person. But I've been doing that for 10 years. And building storage, backup, and playing with open source technology. And I was inspired by open source, not enough to write any software for it or MDM, or anything like that. But I did start Mac DevOps and invited a lot of people to come and hang out in Vancouver because the world is a better place when we get together and hang out and help each other. And yeah, I just love the community. And if I can book cupcakes or sandwiches as my small part to building a community, then I am going to do that. So yeah, that's the short Mad X. But yeah,
Everyone, I think everyone's really in love with Mac DevOps. So thank you for putting that together. I've only been able to manage to attend in person once, but I definitely enjoyed it. Like many things in life, I go and I go, oh, I'm definitely coming back to this, and then life has other plans sometimes. But I love just sort of like it's very personable. It's probably the most personable conference I've been to, where you just feel like I can do everything, I can talk to everyone. It's cozy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the faces here have been to Mac DevOps, and I really want it to be a warm and welcoming place, and we had to do it online this year, 6 months ago. Yeah. We did it online, still trying to keep the community, but I was inspired by DevOps Days and their quick talks and the fact that anybody could get up and just give a quick talk, lightning talk, sometimes they're also called. Yeah, I've been inspired by going to other conferences and seeing everybody work together. And I just know that we could help encourage people to share what they've learned. And I think the best way that I've seen it summarized was in reading Emily Freeman's DevOps for Dummies book recently. And we did a book club for it as well, which is another adventure. But she was saying that, if anybody could be ready to receive knowledge and ready to share knowledge, basically my paraphrasing of her quote. And that's what the quick talks for me is that, we love hearing Ed talk and Henry talk and everybody, but we need to encourage new people. So how do we encourage new people? And we say, hey, you've done something. Maybe you didn't write Recipe Robot, but maybe you wrote a really cool gist, and you can share one thing that you did, or share a problem, or share something that you're working through. And I don't know. Sometimes people get tired of my really positive attitude, but I really want to inspire people to get up there and share one thing. And it's not easy to get on stage. I mean, I'm gifted with the gift of being an ignorant person that can stand on stage, and I don't mind being embarrassed, but it's not easy for everyone. But I would like to encourage people to do that. And so Mac DevOps was a chance for me to help other people to do that. So I'm glad.
Yeah. and you've consistently kind of sought out like a different group of speakers and new faces and introducing new people to the Mac community. So that's awesome. So yeah, thanks for that.
I think we have to use our privilege and our powers, and I've almost not quite bankrupted myself, but spent a lot of money to build Mac DevOps. Don't tell my wife. But you know, I remember the not last year, but the year before when we did it, and I had to pay the credit card bill for the social event, and my credit card was kaput. It was done, and I was almost crying. I was just like, I've done this thing. I've done a bad thing. I've spent all the money. It's like, and I can't even pay the bill. So I had to like turn around and go, anybody got $50, $100? You know, but you know, and that wasn't an open bar or anything. That was just food and all this stuff that I'd ordered. And, you know, so these things come together with help from, you know, JD, Shauna, had a whole bunch of people helping me all through the last couple of years. And yeah, a lot of help, but yeah, you got to have some kind of crazy willpower. And in my case, a lot of ignorance and dedication.
Yeah. That's something that we raise from time to time here. Just that, you know, a lot of us that are involved in putting on conferences, we all talk to each other, you know, sort of like this nice, just like the Mac community in general, sort of gets together and shares, you know, stories and helps figure out problems. Like we're not all in competition with each other, and we all talk a lot. And it's really hard to describe just how difficult it is to put on a good event. And yeah, you've definitely risen above and gone beyond in putting on an event that people really remember. But it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of hidden work, and it's a lot of laying out cash up front and hoping you get it back.
I mean, I mean, the first year I did it, it was a total crapshoot, and you know, I was lucky to have made some acquaintances, hopefully friends, you know, at Google and every place that could just drop of a hat come and visit, and I'm so thankful for them, everyone, for helping me get it started. But not everyone can get the job, you know, the day or the week off work and just fly to Vancouver for a conference. And so yeah, I think, you know, 20 grand or more last time we did it in person was for hotels and flights for people, to get people to come out that couldn't afford to come out, and I paid for all that. So, you know, and we got sponsors that really pitched in when I said I wanted to do a women in IT and try and bring a whole awesome group of women that had never been out at ever. And then, you know, Mac Stadium pitched in, and a bunch of people pitched in. And so sometimes when you have a vision, people will jump in, but you have to put your money where your mouth is. And I really wanted to have a lot of women speakers and a lot of different speakers, and I follow a lot of women in InfoSec on Twitter, and trying to like really like increase the size of the community that I'm following. And I find there's a lot of really cool women, Sarah Edwards and everybody else in the whole InfoSec world. But yeah, just trying to bring new people out and just get us all to work together, and yeah, and hopefully have our minds exploded in a good way. So yeah, it's a lot of effort, and I set really high goals for myself, and every year I think I failed, but I'm doing a little bit better. You know, it's like
the InfoSec world is really wild, because it's this interesting intersection and sort of overlap. Like everyone is interested in security and they kind of want to hear about it, but when you go to like a dedicated security or hacker con, those are just off the rails nuts. They're a totally like different thing. So when we bring those speakers to the Mac world, it's always interesting to find people who can really articulate those concepts to a broad audience. I think that's pretty incredible. So yeah, you know, you raised something that I want to follow up on. You know, you were talking about with conferences, or really like any event, you're sort of looking for the newer people, the new voices. Where do you find those? Because I think, like, you know, I remember when, you know, most of the people on this call right now were the new voices, but we're sort of the old guard now, right? We're the entrenched voices, and it can sometimes be difficult to break out of that comfortable bubble.
Yeah, I mean, when I started Mac DevOps, I was definitely, channeling my old punk rock kid brain, and I said, the Riot Girls from Seattle, I said, kill rock stars. We're not going to have any rock stars at Mac DevOps. It's all going to be new people, and hey, but who's able to join me at a drop of a hat when I decide to do a conference at the last minute? Some known rock stars, but I think one of the principles was anybody who's excited about having solved something. And I tried Twitter and Slack. Mostly Twitter is where I've had most success, and it's hard to say this in a way that doesn't sound creepy, but I just follow as many women and cool people and people. Oh, I see this person has these followers. I'll follow them and see what they're up to, and then. I remember, in 2019, this one woman was like, "Oh, I figured out this really cool thing, but where do I tell people about this? Where do I share what I've learned?" And I was like, "Mac DevOps, like, you're excited." Like, I think everybody on this page, is the page of faces that I'm seeing here is excited about things like I made Recipe Robot, and I'm like, "Oh my God, come and tell me all about it," or Central, or Micro MDM. And when people are excited by something, I get excited, and I think people solve problems. And so just looking, like, Twitter is definitely, there's a lot of trash fires and sad doom scrolling, but there's a lot of cool communities. I helped move someone from the MacAdmin Slack to Twitter just recently because they were trying to get help on MacAdmin Slack, but they weren't finding the right channel, the right group of people. And I said, "Oh, if you go on Twitter and you use this hashtag, you can at me in there as well, and I'll include more people in. I'll like bring them in, and then they're basically like people that worked at, in this case, it was a video question, and people that working at Adobe, working everywhere, all these famous people just jumped in and said, "Oh yeah, here's how I would do this." And so, it's like a really friendly place sometimes when you can get a helping hand. Like,
I like
asterisk.
Yeah. I like that you had to qualify it with sometimes, because there really is something amazing about, this world where you can ask a question and like, the inventor of Photoshop answers your question on Photoshop, or something along those lines. There's a lot of cruft to wade through sometimes, but I think that the tech communities are generally pretty good. And I'll reiterate, like I do all the time, like the Mac community in general is pretty special, and people are in general looking to help. So
I think anyone who survived the old mailing list knows that there's grumpy people who answer everything with more correct answers. So there's nothing on Twitter that can scare me. I've been around a lot of grumpy old people on mailing lists. Like, in the IT world and in other worlds in VFX, there's always somebody that's going to make your life miserable if you take it personally, whether it's Apple or Microsoft or anybody, name a company. Oh, I hate Google today. I hate Microsoft tomorrow. It's like, nobody is personally out to get you other than the people that are specifically targeting you, nation states, right? Nobody cares, right? So don't take anything personally. Just keep moving on. I don't know, as long as we're helpful people, we're always going to have jobs and work. That's my mantra. And all the technical details, I'll just ask Henry or Elliot or other people.
Yeah. So speaking of work, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing. So you're consulting for visual effects studios.
Yeah, visual effects and creative, mostly editing studios right now, because I've helped a couple of visual effects studios, but usually they want indentured slaves or sysadmins to work there, and that doesn't make me happy anymore. And I can only sustain interest in work for a couple hours at a time. I have kids and a family and a wife, and I gotta spend a lot of time looking after my family these days. So I spend half the time with the family and half the time with work. But yeah, mostly with editing, Final Cut, Premiere, mostly storage, backup, archive workflows.
So
as soon as they shoot the film, basically I design a workflow to capture, ingest, archive, all that, everything.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about what that looks like, because I think it's significantly different from what a lot of people either on this call or listening in later as Mac admins think of themselves doing.
Yeah, I mean, in visual effects, just a quick difference is basically the people would shoot, the film on set, and then we'd get a copy of it in visual effects, and I'd build a big SAN, and we'd look at it and just add effects. But with the post-production sort of creative world, I have to design a workflow that as soon as they shoot it, if they're like out in the field, and I have clients that they'll go anywhere, whether it's on top of a mountain or they'll fly to another city and interview people. So we have to design a workflow that allows them to preserve the media. So the same sort of skill set that you have for preserving your backups and your main data, in your office is extended out into the field. So for the camera shoots, it's usually using software to make 2 copies in the field, and then when they come back in the office, it's 2 copies to the office, and then we have watch folders that go to tape, and then nearline archive, and to the cloud, and multiple copies in multiple places. Of course, this year has been very interesting. So we added a whole new remote collaboration workflow. So usually what happens now is that when we do shoot, there'll be 2 copies in the field. One person is designated to go in the office, which is completely abandoned kind of thing, and they'll copy it to the central storage where we'll remotely make proxies, which are smaller versions of the main files, and the proxies get copied to the cloud, into a cloud drive, and a project is checked into, in our case, usually PostLab, and PostLab is basically Git or GitLab underneath for Final Cut and Premiere and other programs. So yeah, I mean, I brought Jasper, who made PostLab, to Mac DevOps because I was really just fascinated with how he merged the whole GitLab idea with video editing. So we basically make proxies and check a project into PostLab, and then editors are sitting at home or in any city they want to be in, and they're picking up the project, and the proxies, are a tenth the size, and so it's really good. And then we can. Basically, an editor will start working on it. A producer is also checking it in and looking at it with Final Cut or Premiere, and then a colorist will have the originals. They'll usually get those transported to them because the originals are a lot bigger, so many terabytes. So yeah, I mean, the problem for me is I usually have gone in the past and cleaned up edit studios that have lots of external drives and centralized it with storage, and now everybody's dispersed. So thankfully, with the use of the cloud, in this case, just for proxies, it allows us to work anywhere, but we still have some drives floating around. But in our case, it's usually just extra copies. It's not the original copy at all. So yeah, it's added some more complexity to it. But thankfully, tools like PostLab and other people in the visual effects and media and entertainment workspace have come up with different workflows to help people work collaboratively. So there's always a silver lining where it's fun to play with new tech. So I've been wanting to get PostLab in to a lot of places before this, because some people were working, in a hybrid format before, or it just helps you, as we all know, with Git and checking in version control. It can help you, revert. Like recently, Apple came out with a new version where they helped the whole proxy workflow and made it even better. But the color space, they changed the way that the footage looked, and so. As soon as you opened it in the new version of Final Cut, your project was updated and you couldn't go back. So you're done. Of course, you can restore your old projects when you have backups, but who knows what is what. So by using PostLab, we'd already had the projects checked in, and we could easily revert to a version that was marked. This version is in this, a version of Final Cut. And so we've been able to easily version back, and they're basically, like a good Git comment. This is where Ed did the audio on his, this is where Henry took that video and did this, or I checked it into Final Cut and updated it. So it's really helped us, in the real world where, this version of Apple Final Cut is actually not good for our color. Until they fix it, we have to revert back. And so, but yeah, using these tools really helps the team collaborate, and we get to mix our DevOps and our media entertainment workflow. So yeah, it's been fun trying to figure out the problem, but I'm sure all of us have war stories of how to be an IT person in this new world. It's a lot of challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, I think your challenges are slightly different though. Like if people are working online with Google Docs or O365 or something like that, you can do that tethered on a mobile phone. But what you're talking about, even with the smaller versions, you're pushing around a lot of data. Again, my time in the film and post world goes back quite some time, and like depending on how long you've been working with Avid, right? Like Avid did that. They had AVR 77, AVR 50, right? All these different Avid video resolutions because you wanted to work on this kind of small, tiny version, do your edits, and then it would apply the edits to the real sort of like the large full res version. And now, thanks to the internet, right? Like not everyone has big pipes, so you're kind of forced back into this like, hey, how can we work on smaller files? But like when Final Cut first came out, like that was like mind bending to a lot of people who had worked on Avid. They're like, well, how can I, where do I go create this smaller file? It's like, no, you don't have to. Like, no big deal. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot. Final Cut's changed a lot, and I mean, our sort of proxy workflow is one way to do it. Another way that people are doing it, are using several different companies to remote into actual workstations back into a centrally managed place. Some people remote into Amazon instances that are connected to a SAN. Other people remote back into the central IT managed setup, kind of like VDI. There's a lot of different companies. I think HP, Teradici from Vancouver has a product as well that is really big in visual effects. And so people literally just have a little unit they plug into their internet, and then they're literally plugged in and just seeing the pixels. So that's a totally different way to approach the how do I edit and how do I use my workstation? How do I access my SAN or all my storage? I know Sony moved a whole visual effects facility to Vancouver by just moving the people, and they didn't have to move any machines or any server rooms or SANs or anything. And so it's good and bad, but there's different approaches to this whole remote workflow, and got to see what works for you and your clients.
Yeah, wow, that's really impressive. Like remote, particularly with video or audio, just would scare the hell out of me. But I guess if I saw it in practice, I guess it would maybe alleviate some of my fears. But
maybe the person who came up with the math said, instead of moving the data through the pipe, why don't we just calculate how many pixels this is in this in this 1920 by 1080 monitor, and just move those pixels. Just
yeah, it's still usually not the best experience, but
no, there's a latency thing, and that's why the using PostLab, for example, using Git, basically we're checking projects in and out, and so you're always working locally, and you're just using the cloud if you want, or an on-prem GitLab server to manage your check-ins. So it's the best of both worlds. You're using it as a central check-in.
Yeah, that's a very cool workflow. What do you find most of your clients are using for editing?
I think the iMac Pro has been the number one. I mean, people were desperately clinging to MacBook Pros for a long time because they like to be portable. But when the iMac Pros came out, I mean, we were still wondering what this new Mac Pro was going to look like. But even before the Mac Pro came out, I was like, this iMac Pro has killed everything else. It's just so good, so powerful, so quiet. And it had 10 gig. I mean, the Mac Mini had 10 gig, and the iMac Pro, half my clients are on 10 gig NFS or at 10 gig SMB. The other half are on Fiber Channel XN or StoreNext. So this was the best of both worlds. But the iMac Pro is amazing. I mean, I'll reevaluate when I see some M1 stuff, and of course, Final Cut works perfectly on the new Apple Silicon. But are
most of your clients using Final Cut?
Most of them. It's sort of a self-selection. I want happy people, so I choose people that use Final Cut.
All right, that's good. I mean, I love Final Cut, but I'm not a professional video editor that has to deal with like a lot of other people editing and trading all these files around.
The last couple of years has been a creative summit in Cupertino, and so editors from all around the world that use Final Cut go there. And then the last couple of years, they've had the entire Pro Apps team, which is more than one person. It's like dozens of people, QA testers. Everybody comes out and hangs out and talks about how they work on all the Pro Apps, and it's a huge team. And the people that use Final Cut are all over the world in every industry. And I mean, it seems to me that people choose Premiere because nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. Nobody got fired for using Premiere because it's the safe choice. But Final Cut is awesome, but maybe it's just a drug that we're all taking. But I don't know. A lot of people really love it, and they say they edit way faster. And I mean, I've had huge companies switch from Final Cut 7 to Premiere, and then all of a sudden they had to rip out all their machines and buy machines that were 10 times more expensive with bigger video cards or multiple video cards. And while Final Cut 10 and 7 both work totally fine with like a lot less resources.
Well, I think you just mentioned the thing that drove a lot of people, at least editors in New York that I know, the shift from Final Cut 7 to 10 really ticked off a lot of people. You can't go like, hey, here's this new version of the program, and all your old stuff is no longer compatible, and you can't load it.
They said you couldn't buy the old Final Cut 7. It was the worst product announcement ever. I was at NEB when they first announced the new Final Cut 10. Yeah, and starting today, you won't be able to buy this old thing you're using. You have to buy our new thing. Yeah, Apple is a ship that moves, and when you're on the ship, you're going with them, and when you're not on the ship.
And again, for someone like me, great. I don't care, but I was sort of in the industry at the time, and that just.
Oh man, so many people. Back to what I was saying before, people get upset and they take it personally. This whole thing by Apple. Apple did this. Apple took QuickTime 7 away from Windows. Apple did this evil thing. I mean, Apple does a lot of things. You gotta. But I know a huge company in New York that went to a Premiere from Final Cut 7, and their machines were no good anymore, man. Like Premiere, you need like 10,000 gigs of RAM, and and beware of Crash City. So.
Yeah, but I do agree with your earlier statement around there is something about being in the Adobe sphere, right? Because you're probably using Adobe products anyway. You're using Premiere. You're going to do some edit, some graphics in After Effects, right? And you probably have done touch-ups in Photoshop, things like that. And
it's a great universe. It's a great universe. People love the products, and they can love going back and forth. And on the other hand, my clients love how they never had to pay for updates after 10 years of buying Final Cut and the other apps. 10 years of not having to pay another dime.
No joke. I've been so just before we went live, I was talking about this space that I'm in, and it's really dark, and it's a sound studio. It's not a photography studio. Like I could figure out the lighting if I really wanted to, but that's not the primary use of this space. But it has been getting a little full lately, so I've been on a cleaning kick, which is also why I don't mind the background being a little dark, because there's stuff all over as I'm trying to clean stuff out. But I did recently find this, if you can see it, and for the youngins who might be watching this, before Apple bought Logic, it was made by a company called eMagic, and I had to plug this into my computer to prove that I was licensed to use Logic. So sort of the same thing on my side. Like I've been using Logic for, I don't know how long, but it was before Apple bought them. And same thing. Once Apple bought them and I could buy it on the App Store, like some of the updates to Logic are incredible. And I don't know, I would give that team another $100 or something to upgrade, because it's just incredible. And I agree. Same thing with Final Cut and Motion. It's like getting all these updates is really nice. That is a good question, though. Not being in an admin position with those apps, particularly Final Cut. If I'm thinking back to my days dealing with Avid, the Avid was basically a Mac with special hardware plugged into the card slots. And when you bought an Avid unit, it was certified for a particular version of Mac OS along with the software release of the editing software. And if Apple came out with a new update, Avid would tell you, do not update until we certify everything and blah, blah, blah. And there would be a new point release and you could update. And you had to do that in sync across your editing bays. Otherwise, you couldn't move projects around and blah, blah, blah. So how does that work with Final Cut? Is that something a single company needs to keep in sync, or?
I mean, I'm happy to say that Avid has continued the tradition. They published a knowledge base article a few weeks ago saying our Big Sur compatibility is wait until next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's nice. I don't know. My Final Cut update mechanism is Monkey. So
Okay.
you could also use VPP, of course, and push out the apps. So, you know, either or.
Is that a surprise to editors? Like, oh, something got updated overnight, or there's this new version.
No, I mean, something I learned in visual effects, because I mean, back then, I mean, Apple bought Shake, which was a huge compositing program, and then they killed it. Another reason to be upset if you're in that business. But, you know, like one thing I learned in that business is that once you start a project, whether it's a movie, a commercial, or a TV show, you stay on that version until that project is done and delivered. And so that same methodology applies to working on a video in Final Cut. So while we've managed this transition, and yeah, I'm an excited little techno geek. So when Apple came out with a new version and said, "Oh, we have a better way of making proxies, everything is golden," I was like, "Let's upgrade immediately." And you know, while we did update new projects to that new version, we basically kept like running versions. So using PostLab, we could have multiple versions running for different projects. So any project that was started on a version would stay on that version. And also, I mean, something like with evaluating a new app is kind of like what sysadmins IT have to deal with and should be dealing with a lot of other apps. But definitely in this space, I have to consult with a team. And I know I was super excited about the new version of Final Cut and this new proxy workflow, because I was like, oh, we'll be able to make proxies and go to the cloud and everything will be easier. And then, you know, I had to have a meeting with the colorist and the camera operators and the editors. And then we all talked about it. And then the camera operator's like, well, I evaluated the color space and they've done something different. And now the color's all wrong. And I'm like, what? We can't use it? Who cares about the color? You know, it's like, they're like, Matt, it's important.
Yeah.
So you do have to talk to the team in whoever is important. I mean, I definitely say that, you know, I test a lot in production, and that's usually my joke. But yeah, if there's a new version of Google Chrome, it gets pushed out as fast as it gets released from auto packager. You know, my auto package recipe feeds into my Monkey, and then I'm just like, yeah, that's just gone. I mean, like, what could Google Chrome actually break? Well, I think a year ago they broke like Avid and a few other things, because on machines that didn't have the SIP protection, they basically munged the var temp or something slightly important, you know, that some Google developers hadn't tested for, because that was just a weird, bizarre situation, and only old Avid people would be on that old version because they stick on old versions forever. But yeah, I mean, I definitely for Final Cut and, you know, project-based things, you want to test maybe a little more thoroughly. But for everything else, I'm definitely testing prod. Prod is the only viable testing environment. So go me.
Very DevOps of you. So you hit on something that I want to come back to, but I need to take a quick break and ask Ed what we're like. I've just been like kind of looking at your video feed from time to time and just watching the sunset. It's been really, really nice. So are we, is that actually looking west? Is that sort of like...
That's a Snapchat filter.
It's beautiful, whatever it is, right? And
that's
nice.
That's Bellport Day.
Nice. And what camera are you using? Because it looks like you have a fisheye lens or something on there. It's a little...
So because of the window, I was getting so backlit. I bought a $40 no-name generic web camera, but that advertised high dynamic range. And it's definitely not as good in some ways, but it actually is better in other ways than the built-in camera on the MacBook Pro.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Matt, the thing that you hit on was sort of like Monkey and auto package. Are you running those in the cloud? Do you get to do multi-tenancy for your different customers, or are you running one setup for each customer and they sort of like get their own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm bleeding edge for some things, but But to be honest, I was running mostly on-prem instances for all clients, usually on a Mac Mini, to the snarfly disrespect of all suit-wearing corporate IT types that I have to deal with on a regular basis. I see your suit, and I give you some flannel and some shorts. Yeah, no, mostly Mac Minis, but I've had Central in the cloud and Monkey Report in the cloud and Monkey in the cloud for testing, and I love it. I don't trust myself to keep it secure, which was why I was super excited with the recent Simple MDM Monkey infrastructure, and while I was also very excited with this whole Central sort of OS query Santa integration too. I like it when other people design my security for me. There seems to be so many holes sometimes, but I love Simple MDM's Monkey sort of idea. But mostly for me, it's been like I've been testing Two Canoes Monkey Report sort of set up at home for certain clients using a modified Tailscale mesh VPN setup to serve out my my Monkey to select recipients on that mesh VPN. Yeah, and that certainly, for the guy who runs the DevOps conference, it was a bit upsetting when this whole pandemic hit, because at this one very secure corporation that can't be named, who are big believers in this great firewall thing, which I'd always tell them about my friends at Google and how, we got to go beyond corp, and they're just looking at me like in flannel and shorts and not listening to me. But yeah, the great firewall got destroyed when everyone left and went on the other side of that firewall. And suddenly nobody could reach the Monkey server except for through VPN, which kind of worked. But now everybody was on the VPN, and Mac OS updates would not work so well that way, or Logic or Final Cut Pro. Yeah, I mean, definitely to answer your question, mostly on-prem before, just for safety, security, and just for keeping it very simple. Definitely I have had lots of test setups in the cloud and worked on, just testing them, but I've never really trusted myself enough to really host a lot, like especially the Monkey Report stuff is more important stuff. But yeah, security, yay.
Yeah, like Monkey Reports is probably more important to you than it is to the studio.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's the other like very stark memory of that time that I have, that despite all of these places being built on technology and 100% reliant on technology, you're still a cost center, right? You're not selling anything. So they really just do not want to funnel money your way. And I presume that's a truism that has held up.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as a pretty stupid person. So when I saw Monkey, I was like, this is really cool. And then when I found Monkey Report, I was like, oh my God, just like now I can see what's actually happening. Like this is what I've been needing that I didn't realize I needed. It was a dashboard to realize what's been updated, what hasn't been updated, what apps are being tracked. And yeah, just being able to me, that's the intelligence I need to manage the fleets, is find out who's on, if there's a problem with Zoom, you can easily find out that if someone has Zoom installed, or if you think that Flash needs to be installed, or, basically above and beyond the apps that you're actually pushing out, you can see what apps are actually already out there. For me, it's been a long journey, but they've made it super easy to make plugins for Monkey Report. And so even a silly, not super smart programmer can easily make plugins and go, I want to watch my P5 backup infrastructure. I want to watch, Microsoft Defender. They didn't have a plugin for that antivirus, ATP. So basically, you could write a plugin really easily and go, now what's ATP doing? And now you have dashboards and all that kind of stuff. And so whether you're using Sal or Monkey Report or Central, having dashboards and some kind of intelligence, really helps you to see what's going on and to either remediate or, help you make decisions. So yeah, it's the missing piece that sometimes we didn't realize we needed. But
at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that you love open source, you're reliant on open source. So you've mentioned Monkey and Sal and Monkey Report. is there any other open source software that you can think of that you really rely on or you love or just makes your day better?
Recipe Robot.
Okay. Oh, and auto package, right? You mentioned auto.
Yeah, auto package. I mean, auto package is awesome. I mean, and you know, I mean, other than having Alistair sit next to me and trying to explain how to auto package works, which I don't know if that would actually help explain anything to me, and I've tried. You know, having Recipe Robot. I mean, we create tech to make our lives easier in a lot of ways, right? To automate so that things are repeatable, right? We shift our brains from like micro MDM to Monkey to, I mean, like we haven't mentioned specifically documentation and blogging, but I use those tools when I try to figure out even something simple for me that may be of slightest interest to someone else, or maybe just me. As you know, as Rich Troughton once said, you know, it's like you document today for the you of tomorrow, wondering what the you of yesterday was doing. And you know, this whole context switching, like, yeah, if it was any more difficult to make an auto package recipe, then I wouldn't be able to figure it out sometimes, or substitute that with any complicated task that you're doing. You're like, oh, I was trying to rewrite a script the other day, and I was like, how did I write this in the first place? Like, I didn't write my good notes on. So, you know, you're taking your brain and shifting, like, I mean, these are things adults have to do. I mean, hey, the roof caved in. I got to figure out what to do with my roof of my house. Or, hey, my basement flooded. I was literally standing in like knee-high water, and I'm like, why is there water in my house? I've never done this before. Help, you know? So, I mean, these are adult problems. How do we figure out how to deal with things that happen suddenly? But in the tech world, it's like, oh, how do I distribute software, and how do I do this and that? And I find we do so many different things in a day that without documenting for ourselves or a community of sympathetic individuals, we might not be able to get through it sometimes. And I thank everyone that has helped me and does a great job documenting or helping us along or answering stupid questions, because yeah, it can be tough. and I definitely say yes, thank you to Recipe Robot and Elliot Jordan and Auto Packager and anything that makes my day a little bit easier. Because we don't always have 5 hours or 2 hours to spend on something to dip our head back in and deconstruct it, reverse engineer it, and figure it all out. Yeah, some of us are super smart, but
Nice. Anyone have questions for Matt?
Oh yeah, just pile on.
Yeah. I mean, besides me, no pressure.
Come on, Henry. Ich habe meine Mutti verloren. Möchtest du mein Freund sein? Ich habe kein Geld.
I hope I'll always be your friend. Yeah, of course.
Yes, please.
And I hope your mom as well. No, I just can comment on some stuff you discussed earlier, because when the big shift with Final Cut happened, Apple acquired a lot of smaller companies and of course some companies from even my hometown, MXF for Mac, that were one of the part of that, you know, ecosystem in the old Final Cut days, and they acquired the intellectual property and merged that into the next version of Final Cut. So I think they had a strategy, but of course a lot of the people still fell off the shelf and moved away from Final Cut, and others stayed because they were happy that everything is now more integrated. And so I still have the Imagic Dongle somewhere here as well. And again, so the Imagic people are still in my hometown here in Hamburg, and they are Apple office now, and the same people I know from back then are still working there. And of course they got extended by more nice people with big expertise in the audio domain. And again, Apple acquired certain companies with domain-specific knowledge for special audio stuff and special, processing.
Yeah. So I do still have the dongle, as I pointed out, and like it won't do anything at this point. It's just like a souvenir. The thing that I'm, of two minds about is I mentioned earlier that like I'm in the process of cleaning out this room and just cleaning out a bunch of stuff and getting rid of old books, and like half of me wishes I had all of the old eMagic books, because also for you youngins out there, when you bought software back in the day, it would come with a printed manual, and the eMagic stuff came in like this huge box, and there's a main manual for Logic, and then there were individual manuals for like each effect or synthesizer or, you know, soft synth or whatever that it came with. And it was just like this amazing collection of just incredible reading. And I find certainly with physical books, I'm much more likely to sort of like leaf through it or look through it, as opposed to, you know, like Logic has fantastic online help and a help system, but you have to be very specific about knowing to go look for something rather than a book where you can stumble across something. You go, oh, I didn't know I needed that, but now I'm going to use it all the time. So I still kind of like it for that. So last question I think I have for you, Matt, is around the new M1 chips that Apple just released. Have you had a chance to test it out, kick the tires, use any video software?
I personally haven't had a chance to try it, but I know that Final Cut, because they released a new version of Final Cut a couple weeks ago with Big Sur during the Final Cut Summit, which was a couple weeks ago as well. And so, yeah, it seems pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, they also upgraded with Big Sur the version of Xan to match the latest versions of StoreNext. So that's ever since 10.7, they've included the $1,000 Xan for free built into Mac OS. So that used to be, you know, $30,000, $50,000 upgrade for a small studio, and then now it was built in for free, right? So, yeah, I mean, I look forward to setting up a bunch of M1 Macs hopefully soon, and hopefully getting some for testing. But everything seems to be super fast. I mean, we're worried about Monkey and Python and all our management tools and all that kind of stuff. But for Final Cut, I mean, yeah, the latest version supports the M1 Max, and that was a big, huge engineering effort on their parts. So,
yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited about the M1 chip. Like, really, just it's very rare in the computer science world that we get something like genuinely new. And you can say, all right, the M1 is a system on a chip, but it's genuinely new. And you know what Apple's doing, and it's so impressive. And it's so impressive to see like how much they can push the envelope, particularly because they control the whole stack. You know, like integrated graphics used to be a dirty word or, you know, frowned upon, and now it's like integrated graphics with metal. Like, we're just going to come through and kick ass. So like, I'm really, really stoked about the future of
yeah,
you know, the whole stack. So
it's definitely impressive. I think for current editors that have iMac Pros, I don't think the M1 Max come quite close. But the fact that we're comparing M1 Max to to Mac Pros, $9,000 Mac Pros, that they're even close is pretty comical. But I think for serious work, the iMac Pro is still an awesome machine, and Mac Pro. But I've talked a lot of people out of buying, you know, MacBook, you know, Intel MacBook Pros because for on the smaller scale, yeah, I mean, it's insane how good they are. But I still think for serious editors right now, the iMac Pro, until we see an iMac or a mini Mac Pro or something, because yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned the iMac Pro. The i9 in that is a 95-watt part, and it's got a Geekbench score of I had to look this up. I talked to someone about this the other day. Single core of Geekbench score is 1265. Multi-core, it's got more cores, is 9414. The MacBook Air M1 has it's 10 watts, by the way, versus 95, and its single core score is 1732. So beats the i9 iMac Pro by a fair amount. And multi-core with fewer cores, I think half the cores, is still 7500 versus 9414. So it's yeah, if you're doing multi-core stuff, that's right now that still has the lead, but that's going to change soon. I was very impressed to see Apple Well, the announcements, the actual announcement, I was like, this seems like a bunch of marketing fluff, and these graphs are terrible, and what the hell? There's clearly not going to be that great, because otherwise they would say things more, not just 2x or whatever. And I think the marketing people they were used to their old ways of doing things, and then it actually came out, and I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty badass.
When you can run Windows.
Yeah.
And you can run everything in emulation or translation, and it's still faster than other Intel hardware.
The stuff they did with Rosetta is great. Like, sort of taping on a bunch of x86 instructions just right into the ARM chip. It's fine. Go for it.
It's just silly how good it is, and that just it gives me a lot of hope for. Again, don't get me wrong. Like probably everyone here, I have a bunch of gear that's going to live on and be pressed into service for, I hope, a long time to come. But like when I think about the next generation of the M1, if it's called the M2 or whatever it's called, right? Like the next thing is going to be just ridiculously badass. So
yeah, I mean, Apple definitely can impress us occasionally. I mean, I know when I set up a huge ZFS storage system for Final Cut editors, and it actually worked. And they were editing off NFS, which was fine for visual effects and image sequences, but for video, I was pretty impressed. I mean, I was setting up for a client, and I never set one up for video editing, and I was like, oh, I hope this works, and it did. So when they made changes in Final Cut to make it work over NFS, I mean, that's just super impressive. And there's a lot of engineering work that goes on behind the scenes. Like I remember, Twitter always lights up around these announcements because a lot of engineers from Apple finally say their one comment a year or something, or 2 comments, maybe more now. But the one, some engineer talked about how they'd worked on with their team about how to make the device refreshing with multiple displays, and how if you change the display settings, it'd be instant. And that there's just so many engineers and so many teams, and I know people like to complain, but there's a lot of hard work. Like in the creative field, in engineering and IT, there's a lot of hard work. I mean, people in this room are all hard workers, and we're all working on stuff. But yeah, Apple engineers are working hard, and congratulations.
Wow. Yeah. Totally agreed. So yeah, usually we wrap this up with conferences and events. I don't know. Matt, I'll go back to Mac DevOps, and I appreciate your decision to have a virtual event. I think, that was a way of kind of keeping everyone together. Last month, we talked a little bit about Mac Sysadmin in Sweden doing the same thing, sort of like this virtual event. I definitely know that I've had like a good time and a good feeling of connection with conferences that I've attended in the past doing it virtually, because like it brings back some sort of feeling, or like you still feel like everyone involved, versus like I know I've done some virtual events this year where it was like first time, and like I don't know any of the speakers, I don't know any, like it's okay, but thanks for doing that. But
yeah, we did it in Discord. We wanted to do it live, and we tried to figure out a way that we could make it an event. And I loved your video at Mac Sysadmin. I loved all the videos, but we didn't want to do a pre-recorded video drop, which I understand why you'd want to do that, because it's a lot of effort. We spent like maybe, I don't know, 10 times less money, but 10 times more time to do a live event, because we did live, every speaker from around the world. Like our producer was in Europe, and my co-host was in Washington State, and I'm in BC in Canada. So it was a lot more work, but we hired a live producer that I know, and we hired Ashton, who's awesome to do visual graphic recording. And so she was drawing the talks while we had it live to YouTube. And then because we decided to only do it for 4 hours, basically you had a community, and then for 4 hours, no matter what your time zone, you could hang out in the Discord. And JD worked really hard to make the channels. And I stole this idea from another conference where we had an introductions channel. And so someone could go like, hey, I'm Henry, I'm from Germany, I work on Central. And Elliot can be like, I'm in Washington and I do this. And I found it was so personable to see people introduce themselves. And you could see, oh, hey, I use Monkey, or hey, I'm a security person, or, and it really helped the conversations a bit, where sometimes in a live conference, maybe I've seen Ed's face, but I don't know him and I can't really talk to him, or I don't know who Victor is and he's hiding in the back, you know. But you know, when you have channels and people introduce themselves, we had a live with Discord. We could have a live Q&A as well, so people would jump out of the stream on YouTube and then go right into a live audio Q&A channel. And yeah, I mean, it was a lot more work to do that, but yeah, and the Every World Australian Conference, they did it in Discord as well, and they actually managed a way to float the Discord discussion channel at the same time as the video. And one of the speakers, who was also a speaker at the Final Cut conference, he was like, "Hey, how can we get the comments off the screen? Because I see everyone shit talking, you know, mostly Matt X, shit talking the speaker at the same time as they're speaking." And so, you know, it's kind of distracting. It's like, what is Henry talking about? What's going on? You know, like, you know, just yeah. It's pretty fun to have a conversation, but maybe not right next to the video. You know?
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember. There was a conference, ages ago, that live, you know, the person was talking, and then they had a feed off to the side of like Twitter comments or something. Yeah. When Twitter was the place where everyone was posting about a conference, and yeah, that's just no good. That's just, it's a distraction to the audience, and you don't know what's going on there. It's not good.
I mean, we were thinking we're going to have to do a.
Like, you want the feedback, just not.
yeah. Later.
Like, I appreciate it, but just not in the moment.
Speaker doesn't seem to know what he's talking about.
Yeah. But what are the next upcoming events, if any? I can't think of any offhand. I don't know if the one conference I can never get myself to go to because of constant personal conflicts has been MacAduck, and I would assume that they would be the sort of first ones coming up, and I assume if they're planning it, they'd be doing a virtual event.
Yeah, you're going to miss the cold gray rain in London, I guess. Or...
I like the cold gray rain in London. Yeah, the first few years they were running that, it landed like squarely on my wife's birthday, so can't miss that. Can't get off to a conference. And then the following two were something else I forget had popped up because they moved it back by a month, and that was still just not good for me.
Yeah, it's all very meta. Like we might just have Mac DevOps again online again in June. And I don't know why June, because we've always had it in June. So why not? You know,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, why do we have conferences once a year? You know, I don't know. You know, it's like you have to rethink everything. Everything's out the window. You know?
Yeah. Well,
Vancouver has almost double the annual rainfall of London, by the way.
Who does?
Vancouver.
Yeah,
Vancouver. Yes, yeah. We call it.
Yeah, but not in June.
Not in June.
Yeah. June is fantastic in Vancouver. It's like 35 hours of sunlight in the day somehow. I don't know how it works, but
yeah, we're far from the equator. So I remember when Greg came up, you know, from his sunny California, and he's like, "It's still sunny here. How come you get more sun in BC than I get in California?" I'm like, "Sorry, secret's out."
Yeah.
Don't come back in December.
Yeah, it's different conference maybe, but skiing.
Yeah. Now you're talking. Yeah, Vancouver's lovely. We like visiting. I always know, you know, a lot of filming happens in Vancouver. Anytime I'm watching a film, at the end it says, you know, thanks to the city of Vancouver. I'm like, oh, I want to go back to Vancouver.
a lot of TV series. I mean, Jackie Chan, Rumble in the Bronx, you know, famously in the Bronx, but with the Vancouver mountains behind, you know, like.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by mountains, and I mean, last time we had it in person, we went up to Squamish, which is not as well known as Whistler, but it's just before Whistler, and huge rock climbing place, but they have mountains, and it's just so beautiful. They call the highway the sea to sky, because you just see like the ocean and these mountains, and it's just, I brought our Dutch speakers last time, and they were marveling at how it was more than their 20-meter high mountains in, the Netherlands. So,
fantastic. Well, I can't think of what the next upcoming event is, so we'll all just keep our eyes open for that. And with that, you know, thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. We don't make fun of your positive attitude. We love it. It's infectious.
I love you all. I want to hug you all.
Yeah. Soon enough. Maybe we'll maybe June.
Yeah, I mean, with vaccines and everything, but yeah, I mean, we have our border closed between these two great, mighty nations, and hopefully your country will straighten everything out. Please.
Yeah. We're all hoping as well, right? But yeah, with that, speaking of December, Happy New Year, happy holidays, Happy New Year. We'll see everyone in January. Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for this intervention.